Good morning, everyone, and welcome into the latest episode of the world's best fantasy show right here on 1252 Sports Chicago. I am Tarbill. To my left is Tyler DaMouse. As you see, we are missing 1/3 of our crew today. There's some earthquakes going on out in California, so unfortunately, Space was unable to join us this morning. Sounds like he is okay, but no internet where he's at right now, so keep him in your thoughts as we move forward here today. So what's up, Ty? How's it been going?
Just excited for another week of football. Like you touched on with Space, hope everything's all right out there. Hopefully he'll be back up and running for us next week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really the most exciting time of the year, isn't it? We just got through week 1 of the NFL season. Now we're on to our week 2 matchups and predictions. Got a lot to get into this morning, and it's the best time of the year for me, man. Nothing beats watching football all day on a Sunday.
It's like you touched on, it's the best time of the year. I'm always looking forward to it. Right when football ends in February, it's like, just 6-7 long months until we get football back again.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I always like, those little pop-up leagues after the season's over, XFL, the AAF, all that semi-pro football that goes on. I'm a big candidate for more football, so anytime I can see more football on TV, it's a good thing. But
I think the XFL is actually supposed to be returning next year. So for the AAF and XFL, I actually started up a fantasy league for both of those. We never were able to finish the season with those leagues.
Unfortunately, I think had COVID not happened, the XFL might have made it through an entire season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there once The Rock brings it back here this next year, I believe. So, But with that being said, Tyler, how about your Packers shitting the bed last week?
Oh, dude, it was a complete embarrassment. I turned the game off in the middle of the third quarter. So yeah, I was sitting there watching it, leading up till halftime. They kick a field goal before halftime. I was like, all right, sweet, we got some points on the board, something to build on. And you go out there in the second half, and it was just more of the same. And yeah, I turned it off. I couldn't watch that anymore.
Something to build on. Little did you know that's all you were gonna get. Hey, that's all right, man. I'm a Bears fan, so I've been frustrated for a long time with how the Chicago Bears have been playing, and obviously losing one to the Rams there. I think everyone anticipated we would lose that home opener, or I'm sorry, that week 1 game, but we've got the home opener here against Cincinnati this afternoon at 12 o'clock, and I'm excited to see what the Bears do. Hopefully, either the Red Rifle has a good revenge game and gets me some receptions for Allen Robinson, and if not, hopefully Justin Fields comes in at halftime. I am sporting the Justin Fields jersey now because it's a great time to be a Chicago Bears fan. We just got to wait for that guy to come in. Got a comment here in the chat that the Bears lose 31-23. I don't know. We'll see what happens, man. Realistically, I think Cincinnati's a much easier matchup for the Chicago Bears than the Rams were. That Rams defense is elite. Everyone knows that. So the Bears were getting the ball out quickly, but they weren't throwing passes more than 10 yards, and it's hard to win a game when everything's dink and dunk, in my opinion. But enough with the Bears. I could sit here and talk about them all morning and just get myself more depressed and probably not even want to watch the game.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we see Fields take over this week. Probably next week. I think it's week 4 at the latest is when they finally turn it over to him, because I think they're going to get spanked next week by the Browns. So if you're going into week 4 0-4, you got to do something to bring some life back to that team.
Well, from what I've seen, Jay Glazer said that he will not start before week 4.
Okay.
But with that being said, I really think it's a game time decision. If the Bears are just getting embarrassed with Andy Dalton at quarterback, it would be almost asinine for them not to make a change and go to Justin Fields just to see if he can light a spark, so to speak, in that offense. And what do you have to lose if you're parading Andy Dalton out here like he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, which he really shouldn't even be. I mean, we saw what he did last year in Dallas. It wasn't spectacular, and Dallas has a lot of weapons on their offense as well. So to me, it just seems silly to think that Andy Dalton's going to come out here and be the savior of the Bears franchise for a year until Justin Fields is ready. We don't owe Andy Dalton the same thing that Kansas City owed Alex Smith, and I'm so tired of seeing that narrative be beat into the dirt that, oh, we have to develop him just like we did in Kansas City with Patrick. Well, you had Alex Smith, who led your team to the playoffs 4 seasons in a row, I do believe, at least 3 before Patrick Mahomes was drafted. Andy Dalton hasn't done anything for this organization except go 0-1. Well,
don't you forget he was promised a starting quarterback job.
There's no such thing as promises in the NFL. I think that's totally stupid. You can't promise a guy that he's going to be your starter, and then your situation changes and you say, well, we promised him that. No, that's when you sit down in the office and have a conversation and say, look, Andy, when we brought you in here, you were our starter because you were the best available quarterback. Now we have the future of our franchise in Justin Fields. He's going to get the starting role. And it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of, it's not if, it's when. So,
I mean, you saw it last week, the couple plays Fields did get. He is the better player out there. He gives them the best chance to win.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he came in, threw a nice completion, and then Andy Dalton throws a pick in the end zone. Don't get me wrong. He could have thrown that same pick in the end zone behind the Bears' atrocious offensive line, but it's just one of those things where it's frustrating. You see a guy like Fields come in, give your team a spark, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat for a minute, and then Andy Dalton comes back in, throws a pick. What? Why? Like, if you're gonna do this rotational quarterback shit, put him in for a series. At least give him more than one play. I mean, let him get a couple consecutive plays in and build some rhythm. I don't, the wise saying is that if you've got two quarterbacks, you have zero. So, and
Exactly.
that's going to be essentially what the Bears' problem is, as long as they're doing this situational role with Justin Fields. I don't get it, but I could sit here and rant on that for the rest of the show. We've got a lot to talk about. So you want to get into some week 2 matchups?
Let's get it.
So who's the first game? Well, you want to pull up the list of the matchups this week? Do you got one?
Yeah, I got it right here. All right, yeah. So the first game of the week, New Orleans at Carolina. So I think the Saints, they continue their role. Sam Darnold looked pretty solid last week, but I don't know if he's going to get any momentum going up against that pretty stout New Orleans defense. I mean, I think you're still going through. You're still starting Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, possibly Robbie Anderson. I think that's pretty much it on the Carolina side. What are your thoughts?
I would agree there. DJ Moore's a tough one for me because he's one of those guys that either has a great game or has a horrible game, in my opinion. At least that's what he did the season before last when I had him on my fantasy team. So he's a guy that I personally try to stay away from. He reminds me a lot of Tyler Lockett. Either he does really great or has very minimal impact in a game. But obviously you're still starting McCaffrey if you've got him. On the New Orleans side of the ball, I will have Kamara playing in one of my fantasy leagues today, so be excited to see the production that he has. Last week, Space, he was talking about famous Jameis. He's a big Jameis Winston guy. And then Jameis Winston comes out and throws 5 touchdown passes for like 143 yards. Like,
yeah, 20 passing attempts, and he threw 5 touchdowns. I mean, if it's anybody that's going to whoop the Packers' ass like that, I'm glad it was famous Jameis.
In that regard, I guess, yeah, you're big on Jameis Winston too. So it was at least it's a guy that you like that did it, but just incredible. I think that was since 1960. That was what was the stat? Like 5 touchdowns under 160 yards. That's the first time that's happened since like 1962 or something like that.
Yeah, it just completely annihilated that defense. But hey, I just got a notification over on my side. Justin Fields is to see increased snaps in week 2.
Let's go. Hopefully that means increasingly. Hopefully it's so increasing that by halftime he's just out there full, but we'll see. Man, that's one thing that really is, like I was telling you in the pre-show before we got on the air, it's one of those things where I wanted to turn the game off against the Rams, and every time I did, they were throwing Justin Fields out for a play, and as silly as that sounds, it didn't matter that we were down big in the third and fourth quarter. You just see the guy come in, and it's electrifying. It brings life to the team for a second. Mm-hmm. And then it gets deflated again as soon as Andy Dalton runs back onto the field. But
all right. The second matchup we got here is the Bengals at the Bears. I think the Bengals can actually pull this one out. I'm starting Mixon on the Bengals side. T. Higgins, Chase, Boyd. If you're in a PPR league, I think he's got a nice little floor. And then on the Bears side, I think the only 2 guys you are starting in this game are Montgomery and Allen Robinson. Do you think anything different?
I would agree with those 2. I would say possibly Darnell Mooney if you're in a PPR league, because I think he's going to start to see a lot more receptions as the season goes on. I know he's really built up a great rapport with Justin Fields in practice from the snaps that they've gotten together. So depending on who's on the field, I think I think once Fields is on the field, no pun intended there, I believe that Darnell Mooney will start to get a lot more touches. But for this week, yeah, it's probably just Robinson and Montgomery. I've got Robinson going in one of my leagues, and he shit the bed last week. Well, I shouldn't say he did. The Bears play calling shit the bed last week. If you look at his route tree, it was absolutely atrocious. So when a guy's only running 5 to 7 yard routes, what can you really expect for production out of him? Robinson's not a big yards after catch guy. I mean, he'll make a good catch in traffic and he'll run if he can, but he's not a speedster. So obviously their utilization of him's been all wrong. So hopefully that changes here going into this week, because I need some good production out of him if I'm going to pull this week out.
Well, you got a solid matchup to look forward though too. Bengals secondary is pretty soft.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one thing that will hopefully increase his points this week. So we'll see what happens there.
The next matchup we got here is the 1-0 Houston Texans at Cleveland. I think Cleveland completely blows the doors off of this game. On the Houston side, I don't think anybody, you can start anybody besides Brandon Cooks. I think he's going to put up a bunch of garbage time performance, and no matter who's around him, where he's at, he's always producing.
Yeah. So you said the 1-0 Houston Texans. You highlighted that. I want to know your opinion quick on not obviously their quarterback situation with Watson. We've touched on that, but Tyrod Taylor, what are your thoughts on him? Because that's their starter, right?
Yeah. I don't think you ever want to play him in a one quarterback league, but if you're in a super flex or 2 quarterback league, if you're ever in a pinch, I think you can always go to him. He's a nice guy to toss on your bench. If you're in a super flex or 2 QB, any starting quarterback in the league, no matter how bad they are viable for fantasy just because they're a starting quarterback and they do tend to put up the most points out of any position. But yeah, in a 1 quarterback league, I don't think it's worth it unless you're in a super deep league, like a 16-team league, and you got guys rostering 2 or 3 quarterbacks. I don't think he's valuable unless you have a dire situation like that.
I would agree. It was good to see him have a little bit of success last week. I think Tyrod Taylor, his whole career, has been really handed the short end of the stick, so to speak. So if he has the opportunity to succeed down there in Houston while investigations are ongoing with their franchise quarterback, then good for him, man. I hope he does well, and I hope he gets a big contract out of it. But moving on.
Next matchup we got here is the Rams at Indy. I think the Rams pull this one out. I just think that defense is too good. Carson Wentz is still getting his feet underneath him in that offense. But on the Rams side, you're starting. I'm actually going with Stafford this week over Tannehill in a couple leagues. But I think Stafford. I mean, he played fantastic last week. That was I think the stat was it was the greatest game ever played in a quarterback's debut for a new team or something like that.
Yes, I believe that's correct. He did play absolutely well against the Bears' terrible secondary. But I mean, come on. When a guy catches the ball, rolls on the ground, and you don't touch him down, that's unacceptable. What are we doing, Bears defense? Come on. That's not Monster of the Midway-esque at all.
But, you're starting Darrell Henderson, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee. He's a low-end tight end 1 for the week. Then on the Colts side of the ball, I don't think you're starting anybody on that offense besides Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. That was the one silver lining for me with the Rams was that 55-yard bomb pass that Stafford threw was to Cooper Kupp, and I've had him going in another league. So I had that oh shit moment as a Bears fan, and then I was at least happy to see that it was a guy that got me some big points for that 55-yard reception and touchdown. So
you want to go ahead and take a break, and then we'll hit the next couple matchups?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick word from our sponsor here, guys, and we'll be back with you in 60 seconds.
Hello, this is Paul from Nick and Ivy Brewing Company. We are located at 1026 South State Street in historic downtown Lockport, Illinois. We are very excited to be partnering up with the Fat Mike Chicago Sports Show as well as the 1252 brand because we are one of the few Chicagoland breweries that embrace sports and sports culture. Come in for a fresh brewed beer made right here in Lockport while catching the game of your favorite team. Stay for the live music that we have booked every weekend. Or just come for a cozy atmosphere to enjoy a good conversation with a friend, loved one, or complete stranger. Nick and Ivy makes you feel right at home no matter what the occasion is. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for Nick and Ivy Brewing Company. Visit our website for our up-to-date tap list or to go shopping on our online store at nickivybrewing.com. That's Nikivy brewing.com. Come in today for a fresh brewed beer born and raised in Lockport, Illinois.
All right, guys, that was a quick word from our guy Paul over at Nick and Ivy Brewing in beautiful downtown Lockport, Illinois. Yesterday afternoon, they had a beer release for our guy Fred Hubner of 1252 and ESPN 1000. The Hubner IPA was released. Him and Fat Mike did a live show out there. Great content. Those guys were talking a bunch of Bears stuff, having a few beers. So if you're in the area, be sure to stop out, see Paul and his team. Grab you a 4-pack of the Hubner or the Fat Mike Lager, I believe is still available. So if IPAs aren't your thing, you could always try that. But really good beer from what I hear. And I've got Mike saved me a 4-pack in his fridge, so I'm going to have to stop over there soon and pick that up.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get my 4-pack from him too.
Absolutely. Should be some good stuff.
All right, yeah. So the next matchup we got on the day is another noon game. The Denver Broncos at Jacksonville. I think the Broncos completely murdered Jacksonville this week. You saw what happened to them last week against the Texans.
Don't say that. Don't say that. I took Jacksonville in my pick'em this week.
Oh man, that's pretty bold there.
Hey, Trevor Lawrence did not look bad in his debut. I mean, other than the interceptions, obviously, he needs to clean some things up there. But overall, I think if he does what he needs to do and doesn't try to be a savior of the team, so to speak, I think they could pull it out. I mean, who's the Broncos quarterback right now? Drew Lock?
Teddy Two Gloves.
Oh, Teddy Bridgewater. Okay. So I've never been a big Teddy Bridgewater guy. I think he's gotten his chances many places and just hasn't been able to put it all together, in my opinion. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. We'll see. Hopefully I get that one right and shock you a little bit, Ty.
But on the Denver side, you're starting. I think I'm starting Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, both of them.
Okay.
They got a cake matchup against a very, very soft Jacksonville defense. I think they're going to run all over them. I think you can also go ahead and start Sutton. Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler are nice little plug and plays if you need a PPR wide receiver. Maybe throw them in your flex spot or something like that. I do like KJ Hamler more than Tim Patrick. You can attack Jacksonville in the slot, and with Jerry Jeudy out, he ran a lot of his routes last week from the slot. So I think KJ Hamler's going to slide in there. I think he's got a nice floor this week, around 7-8 PPR points is his floor. But I mean, if you're looking for a guy that low, that's all you can ask for. And then on Jacksonville's side, James Robinson, I don't know. He's an iffy start. If you have anywhere else to pivot to, I probably would, but we're still this early in the season. Running backs are extremely hard to get. I think you might be stuck with him, but temper expectations. Last week was a rough week, and they're going up against a even rougher defense this week. And then DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, I think they're fine flex plays this week. I don't think they're anything special, but unless you have something better to pivot to, you got to play your guys.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Anybody that drafted any players from Jacksonville, there's going to be some uncertainty while Trevor Lawrence gets his feet wet. So I would agree with you there, but your comment on KJ Hamler, I've always liked to watch. I think he's an exciting player. I've liked watching him, and he doesn't obviously get big usage, but he's explosive, he's quick, he's fun to watch. So
he's got a nice little opportunity now that Jerry Jeudy's out.
Right. So we'll see what he does with it over the course of the season.
All right, next game we got on the schedule, Buffalo at Miami. I think Buffalo rights the ship this week. What do you think?
I took Buffalo in my pick'em this week to win. I think that Josh Allen's a hell of a quarterback. I think everyone knows that. So I think he'll be able to put the ball down the field, and they'll have a good game. Hopefully, that their running back usage is the one thing that kind of worries me a little bit. I'm not a big fan of like running back by committee or situationally putting running backs in. You saw the Bears did it last week. David Montgomery would get hot and have 3 or 4 consecutive nice runs, and then they'd throw number 8 in there, Williams, and he'd get stuffed behind the line. And it's like, what are you doing? Just feed the hot hand. So I wouldn't take any of Buffalo's running backs, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, so I actually didn't mind Singletary coming into the week because Zach Moss was inactive last week, but we have gotten word that Zach Moss will be playing this week. So with that news, I don't think you want to touch any of Buffalo's running backs. Even if Zach Moss wasn't playing Singletary, he's not very good. But with both of them just taking work away from each other, I don't think any of them are fantasy viable. You're obviously playing wide receiver for Buffalo. You're playing Diggs. I like Cole Beasley as a PPR flex option if you need somebody to pivot to. He's got a nice floor. And Gabriel Davis, if you're looking for upside, you need a big play. I think Gabriel Davis is your guy. Obviously, he's not going to be ranked super high, but he's a nice guy to plug in if you need somebody. I don't think he's on the waiver wire in too many leagues. He was probably drafted. He's probably on somebody's bench, so I don't think you'll be able to pick him up. But then on Miami side of the ball, I don't think you're starting Tua. Gaskin, I'm starting Gaskin. I like Gaskin this week. And then Devontae Parker, I'm starting Devontae Parker. I think he's a wide receiver 3 this week. You can plug him in your flex spot. Just with Will Fuller. Will Fuller was supposed to be back from suspension this week, but he's out this week for personal reasons. I did like Will Fuller this week, but as a pivot, I like Devontae Parker now because he's the top guy there.
Okay. We got a question here in the chat real quick. Wanted to get our advice on who to play. Need 2 of these 3 for a non-PPR league. Juju, DJ Clark, or Myles Gaskin. I'm personally going to say go with Juju and Myles Gaskin. What are your thoughts, Ty?
Oh, yeah, that was exactly my thoughts there, too. With it being a non-PPR league, you wanna get Gaskin in there. Running backs they're top tier in a non-PPR league. But, yeah, I think you go with Juju and Myles Gaskin. I think Juju has a nice little floor. He might not pile on a ton of yards, but Big Ben's going to be looking for him over the middle of the field.
And then we've got another question here. PPR league, sit 1. Juju, Jamar Chase, Mike Williams, or Tyson Williams? Who are you sitting in that scenario?
I think you're sitting Tyson Williams in that one. I just got a notification. Baltimore is going with the hot hand at running back. I think Devontae Freeman is active, so you're going to have a rotation of Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray, and Devontae Freeman. I don't think Le'Veon Bell's been activated from the practice squad yet.
No,
but
he hasn't.
Just with the hot hand approach that they're going to go with, that kind of scares me off of Tyson Williams. He is my favorite running back from that team this week, but out of those options, I'd probably sit Tyson Williams.
I would agree with you there as well. Just everything you just said, you go running back by committee, and then none of those guys are really viable fantasy options because you don't know who's going to have the hot hand, who's going to get the most carries.
I mean, on Monday night, Tyson Williams, he looked like he was shooting out of a cannon there. He looked great, and then in the second half, they barely used him because they wanted to get Latavius Murray involved. I mean, I don't know what they were doing there. You could obviously tell by watching the game that Tyson Williams was the better running back.
Maybe their coach has been taking notes from Matt Nagy. Who knows?
All right, next game on the schedule, we got New England at the Jets. I think New England destroys the Jets. I don't think the Jets are very good still. I don't think you're starting Mac Jones or Zach Wilson unless you're in a super flex or two quarterback league.
Agreed.
Damian Harris, he's a nice play. I think he's better in non-PPR than PPR, but I think he's still a nice solid play. James White in a PPR league, he's a nice little flex play this week.
Okay.
And then Jacoby Myers would probably be the only wide receiver I'm starting on the New England side. The Jets side, I don't think anybody is worth starting outside of Corey Davis. We saw last week and all preseason that Zach Wilson does like to hyper target Corey Davis. He just locks right onto him.
I would agree with you there as well, and I do think that New England's going to come out with this game. Mac Jones had a really impressive debut, in my opinion. Obviously, the costly fumble there at the end of the game. Otherwise, they would be 1-0 coming into this week. So I think Mac Jones is in the perfect system for him to succeed. We've touched on that before, but like you said, unless you're in a 2 QB league, you're not going to start a guy like Mac Jones. Just doesn't make sense.
All right, next matchup here, we got San Fran at Philly. I actually like Philly in this game. I think they could pull it out. Jalen Hurts. Big fan of Jalen Hurts. But the only quarterback in this game you're starting is Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's an upper echelon option. I think he's a bottom end quarterback one. But he's still a nice starter. He's still ranked in the top 12. Running backs in this game, Miles Sanders, you're starting. Elijah Mitchell, you're starting after that huge game last week. And if you're in a fab league, you spend a bunch of fab to pick him up. Or you used your high waiver claim. So, I mean, you got to toss him in there, especially coming after a game like that. Trey Sermon, he's a nice guy. Just keep your eye on him. He didn't play last week. He was inactive. If you could possibly buy low before the game starts, I think with the draft capital, they spent more draft capital on Sermon than they did Mitchell. I know with Shanahan, that doesn't really matter. It's what are you doing for me now?
Right.
But with the Shanahan offense, we've seen it time and time again. It changes every week. I mean, Trey Sermon, I think he's a nice buy low option that has the possibility to possibly take over the backfield for San Francisco with Mostert out for the year.
That hurt. I'm not gonna lie, that one hurt.
And then wide receivers in this game, I think Debo and Devontae Smith are the only options, and obviously you're starting Kittle. Ayuk, I do like Ayuk, but after what we saw last week, I would not want to start him unless he's literally your only option. I think he's still going to be a fine option for the rest of the season, but you want to take a wait and see approach. Shanahan did say he was going to play more this week, but you want to actually see it. Shanahan could tell you all you want, but you actually want to see it on the field before you put him in your lineup.
Agreed. Ayuk's a guy that I had starting last week. He obviously didn't perform well for me, so he's on my bench. I didn't release him, but I'm going to take that wait and see approach over the next couple weeks here before I throw him back in my lineup.
All right, we got Vegas versus Pittsburgh, or Vegas at Pittsburgh. Derek Carr and Big Ben, I don't think either of them are starters in a one quarterback league unless you're in a pinch.
Agreed.
There was a report, so Josh Jacobs is out for the week with I think it's still his turf toe.
Right.
There was a report that Peyton Barber is supposed to lead the backfield this week over Kenyon Drake, which kind of shocked me. I think Kenyon Drake is the better back than Peyton Barber.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking about starting Kenyon Drake this week if I had him. But just with that report scares me, especially going up against a great Pittsburgh defense with a solid line, solid linebackers. I mean, if I could pivot off of one of these running backs, I mean, you shouldn't be relying on these guys anyway. These guys were depth pieces you drafted super late. You should have better options. But, I mean, unless I'm in a pinch, I don't think I'm tossing in Kenyon Drake or Barber. Obviously, you're starting Najee. He's got a better matchup this week. And then wide receivers on Vegas side, I don't think I'm starting any of them. I think I still want to see more out of Bryan Edwards. I liked what I saw at the end of the game last week, but they didn't target him until the fourth quarter and then overtime. So I mean, I want to see if that continues over this week. I do have Bryan Edwards in a lot of leagues. Me and Space were both hyping him up. I drafted him in the last couple rounds in a bunch of leagues. But then on Pittsburgh's side, I think you can go and start the Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and Juju. And then tight end, obviously you're starting Waller. He's the second best tight end in the league behind Kelsey. And hell, if he keeps getting his usage he saw in week 1, he might overtake Kelsey.
You say he's the second best tight end in the league?
Yes.
So he's better than George Kittle?
Fantasy-wise, yes. Actually playing, I think Kittle is the best tight end in the league, just what he can do receiving and blocking, because he's a fantastic blocker as well.
But strictly from a fantasy perspective,
yes,
especially in a PPR league, he's probably your number 2. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. All right, next matchup here. It's a 3:05 game. We got Minnesota at Arizona.
Arizona's going to mop the floor with Minnesota this game.
Oh, yeah, I think the same. I think Arizona keeps up the hot hand after what they did to Tennessee last week. So Kyler, you're obviously starting Kyler. Dalvin Cook, you're starting. I do not mind Chase Edmonds and James Conner both this week. I think they both got solid matchups. Wide receivers, you're starting Thielen and Jefferson. Hopkins, you're starting. And I think Kirk and A.J. Green on Arizona's side, they're a nice little upside play this week. If you're like a heavy underdog or something, you need some big explosive plays. Or if you're doing DFS, I think they're nice little cheap options. I think A.J. Green's like $3,700 or something like that on DraftKings, which is super cheap. He has the possibility to get a touchdown against a pretty soft Minnesota defense. And then tight ends, I don't think you're starting any on any side. What do you think?
I would agree there. Obviously, as you said, Cook, you've got Justin Jefferson on Minnesota. We've got a question here in the chat. Do either of us think Justin Jefferson will have a big game in what should be a shootout against Arizona, or is he handicapped because of his QB? Well, I would say he's always handicapped because of his QB, because his QB is Kirk Cousins. No, but in all seriousness, I think you'll get nice production out of Jefferson today. He's always a solid, reliable target, and I think that he'll at least have one touchdown and he'll have a bunch of receptions. So, what's your thought, Ty?
Yeah, I like Jefferson this week. I think he's a back end wide receiver 1 for this week. He's probably around wide receiver 9-10. You're obviously starting him. It helps a lot with Irv Smith being out of the offense. He's out for the year.
Right.
Irv Smith was one of my sleeper tight ends coming into the year, but with Irv Smith gone, the only 2 passing options outside of Cook, who's getting all the dump offs, is Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. So he's gonna keep hyper targeting those 2 guys, and just keep an eye out on KJ Osborne.
Okay. Before we finish up this list, let's take another quick break here and hear from a couple of our sponsors here at 1252, and we'll be back with you in about a minute.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Darren, licensed real estate broker with Coldwell Banker Real Estate Group in Homer Glen. Are you looking to buy or sell? Have you been disappointed in the past? The Jonathan Darren team with Coldwell Banker Real Estate Group focuses on providing you with a concierge level of service during the process of buying or selling. We are a service-oriented team with a fresh and professional approach to selling real estate. Our goal is to combine knowledge, skills, and passion to exceed our clients' expectations, and most of all, we truly care. We are a knowledgeable real estate team focused on offering expertise and innovative solutions for our clients. The Jonathan Darren team has 5 full-service real estate brokers and a dedicated full-time marketer servicing all of Chicagoland. We will customize a detailed plan around your timeline for a sale, purchase, investment, estate, or other needs. Real estate transactions can be stressful, but don't need to be. Let us handle it for you. Visit our website, homesbyjdt.com, or call 708-308-1938 today. Expect better in real estate. Choose the Jonathan Darren team.
Real estate is hot right now, and you need an attorney to handle all of this. My guy, Mark Berardi, does this all day long. He's a straight shooter. There's no fancy language. He's just to the point. And he and his team get the deal done. There's no BS. He also does estate planning, trusts, wills, and power of attorney. He has great reviews up and down the board from a ton of happy clients. For him and his big team, they're all just down to earth and normal people as much as he is. You will not be disappointed you went with him. He's located in Homer Glen and New Lenox and handles real estate all over Illinois. There's no place too far, so give him a call today at 708-942-8030. Again, that's 708-942-8030, or look him up online at Mark Berardi and Associates.
All right, guys, and we are back after a quick word from our sponsors. Big thank you to all of our sponsors here at 1252 Sports Chicago. None of this would be possible without them, so we appreciate you guys. Let's hop right back into this list, Ty. We're going. We got some key matchups here coming up. So
yeah, so we got 5 more matchups left on the week. This one right here, another 3:05 game, Atlanta at Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay blows the doors off Atlanta. Man, as I'm going through this list again, it looks like, well, my thoughts is I think there's going to be a lot of blowouts this week just based on the matchups.
I would agree.
But, quarterbacks, I only think you're starting Tom Brady this week. Matt Ryan, if you're in a 2-quarterback or super flex league, possibly. In a 1-quarterback league, I don't think you're plugging him in there. I think he's a pretty bad start this week going up against that defense. Running backs, I don't think you want to start any running back from this game on either side. It's just a headache on Tampa Bay's side. Mike Davis, he's going to be going up against the best rushing defense over the last 2 years. He didn't have a great game last week. I don't think you're going to expect anything. Calvin Ridley, if you're starting on Atlanta's side for wide receivers. Tampa Bay, I think you could start the big 3 wide receivers they have, Godwin, AB, and Mike Evans. I think they're all fringe wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2s this week, all probably in the 10 to 16 range. Split them up. It's a fantastic matchup. That Atlanta defense has sucked for years.
Yeah, Godwin got me some good points last week, so I'm going ahead and starting him again this week in one of my leagues, along with Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson. So hopefully I get good production out of all 3 of them. It'd be a nice week if that happens. But, yeah, Godwin, he's solid. I like him. As you said, you've got Evans as well. He's always solid and reliable. And then AB's a guy that you know who Antonio Brown is. You know what he can do. So all 3 receivers there, as you said, should be viable options.
So this morning I was looking at the receiving lines on DraftKings Sportsbook for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers.
Of course you were.
The receiving lines this morning, they probably changed within the last hour and a half since I looked. Antonio Brown was 70.5 receiving yards. Chris Godwin was 68.5, and Mike Evans was 56.5 receiving yards. That was their line for the week.
Okay. I would take all 3 of those bets, actually.
Yeah, they're all solid bets there. It's kind of surprised me that they view AB as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I still think he's the wide receiver 3, but he does have the upside to be the best wide receiver in this offense this season.
Yeah, I would agree. It definitely is a little surprising to see him be the wide receiver 1 as far as yards are concerned. But again, all 3 of those guys, that's going to be an any given Sunday situation for all 3 of those guys all season long. So,
And then I don't think we touched on the tight ends. Tight ends, I think you're starting Pitts and Gronk after last week's performance. I think you got to go back to him, especially with this cakewalk matchup.
Okay.
With Pitts and Ridley, temper expectations. I think you're looking at more of the same like you got last week going up against Tampa Bay's defense, but I don't think you can pivot from them. But just temper your expectations. Don't expect a huge blow-up game from those 2 guys. All right, 325 here. We got Dallas at the Chargers. Call me crazy. I think Dallas can win this, even though fuck Mike McCarthy.
I will not call you crazy at all. Dak Prescott had a tremendous first game. Obviously, they lost, but it wasn't his fault. At that point, he threw for over 400 yards. Solid outing. Racked up my points with Amari Cooper in week 1, so I was happy to see that. But I think Dallas comes out and wins this one easily. I think this is going to be a blowout game. I don't think that – I don't believe that the Chargers – I don't think that Justin Herbert can – as great as he's been in his rookie season, and he was solid last week, I just don't think that he's got enough in the tank to keep up with Dallas. They obviously – it doesn't matter what league you're in, what format. You're starting Zeke Elliott. You're starting Amari Cooper for sure at wide receiver. Who else are you starting? You starting Michael Gallup?
Michael Gallup's on the IR right now.
He is. I missed that one.
Yeah, no, Dallas side, you touched on. We're starting Zeke, starting Cooper. You're starting Lamb. Those three guys should be locked into your lineup every week. The Chargers side, you're starting Eckler, Keenan Allen, and I do like Mike Williams this week. Nice wide receiver 3 for the week. Plug him in your flex, or if you start 3 wide receivers. And Cedric Wilson, he's a nice little pivot option if you need to plug and play somebody. He'll be coming into the Michael Gallup role. If Dak keeps throwing the ball as much as he's shown over the last 2 years, there is plenty of targets to go around in this offense. And if he's going to be out on the field, he's going to get targeted. You can't throw every ball to CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper.
Right. Are you starting Dak Prescott?
Oh, absolutely. He's locked and loaded top 5 quarterback every week.
Yeah, agreed. No brainer there, but we didn't touch on it. So
yeah, Justin Herbert. You're starting Justin Herbert too. Dallas defense, they stink. And I do like Jared Cook as a tight end streamer this week. He's a nice plug and play. He's at the end of the show. I got a couple streamers for us. He is one of the tight end guys I got.
Okay.
And next matchup here, we got Tennessee at Seattle. It's a 325 game. Ryan Tannehill and Russell Wilson, you're starting both of them. Tannehill on the lesser extent if you have a better option. Yeah. He is on the fringe, quarterback 1, quarterback 2. Russell Wilson should be locked in as top 6 option every week until we see different. Until the second half comes along and his production dies off like it does every year of his career.
That kills me, but like you said, it's historically he's always worse in the second half of the year, and I don't understand it. Maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's a mental thing, who knows? But either way, like you said, you're starting both of those guys this week.
Running backs, I think you're starting Derek. Oh, not I think. I know you're starting Derrick Henry and Chris Carson on both sides. Wide receivers, a lot of great wide receivers in this game. A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, they're locked and loaded in your lineup. The only question mark I have for wide receiver this week is Julio Jones. After what we saw last week, with the draft capital you spent on him, you might not have a better option. But if you do have a better option, I'd like to take a wait-and-see approach to see him acclimate himself better into the offense. We didn't see him in the preseason at all. He didn't practice very much leading up to the season. So, I mean, I'd just like to see him more after last week. What happened? I'd like to see him actually prove it in this offense before I throw him back in my lineup. If I do have a better option, if not, obviously you're stuck with him. You got to plug him in there. Still not a bad play. It's still Julio Jones, still one of the best wide receivers of all time. But if you do have somebody else you can pivot to, I would like to do it this week.
Understood, and I would agree with you there. Like you said, he's just got to acclimate before I would trust him to be a starting receiver if I had someone else that was viable to pivot to.
All right, now we are at the Sunday night game, matchup of the week, Kansas City at Baltimore.
I think Kansas City runs this one.
Oh, yeah, especially Baltimore. Baltimore's offensive line is starting to get decimated. They lost on Monday to Vegas. I don't think Vegas is very good. I think Kansas City should run away with this. It's going to be very high scoring, though. Should be lots of fantasy points involved. Obviously, you're starting Mahomes and Jackson. They're both top 3 quarterbacks this week.
Yep.
CEH, you're starting at running back, where it gets dicey over in Baltimore. Like I touched on earlier, Tyson Williams is my favorite running back in Baltimore for this week.
Right.
I think he's outside of the running back 2 conversation this week. He's an RB3, a high-end RB3. I think you can plug him into your flex if you need to. I think, like I touched on earlier, he showed more explosiveness than Latavius Murray last week. It's just hoping that he has the hot hand to start the game and they ride with him. Hopefully he doesn't make any mistakes, and then you're going to see more Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman out on the field.
Yeah, with that ride the hot hand approach, it's either going to be very good for those that have him on their team or very bad depending on how the game plays. So I would stay away from all the running backs on Baltimore's side, in my opinion, but we'll see what happens.
Tyreek Hill, obviously you're starting. He's a top three wide receiver this week and every week. And then on Baltimore's side, Marquise Brown, he's a solid play this week, but he's all dinged up. Sammy Watkins is one of my favorite streamers this week. I think Baltimore's going to be playing from behind. They're going to be passing the ball a lot. And with the amount of points that are going to be scored in this game, I think you gotta have somebody on Baltimore's side. If you don't trust the running backs, who else do you trust? Lamar Jackson isn't going to be able to do it all himself. So I think Sammy Watkins is in for a solid game. He does have the revenge game narrative going for him, going up against Kansas City.
Right, and that could very well play to his favor.
And then obviously you're starting both tight ends, Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. Don't be down about what we saw from Mark Andrews last week. It's a one-off. It's not going to happen every week. I think he gets back going this week.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think, like you said, don't be a guy that instinctively drops him or something like that just because of the performance that he had last week. Stick with him. He's a guy that'll be consistent over the season for sure.
All right, final game of the week, Monday night, Detroit versus Green Bay.
I think Detroit wins this game 41-3. I'm just kidding.
Well, if Detroit wins this game, you will not see me on here next week. But no, I think the Packers right the ship. They take all their frustrations out on Detroit from what happened last week in Jacksonville. So Packers' first home game, I think Rodgers is going to want to come out and make a statement. It's an extremely soft defense.
Absolutely.
Quarterbacks, you're starting Rodgers. He's a top 8 option this week. Jared Goff, I actually do like Jared Goff as a streamer. So he put up a ton of points last week, a lot of it in garbage time. I think he's quarterback 4 on the season right now. He did put a lot of it up in garbage time, but I think there will be a lot of garbage time in this game. So, I mean, if you don't have a better option, if you're a big underdog looking for a boom performance, I think Jared Goff is a nice little pivot if you need to go to him.
Okay.
Aaron Jones, you're starting. I think you're starting both Swift and Williams. It's just because the wide receiver options for Detroit are very bad. We saw last week Jared Goff was dumping it off to Swift and Williams constantly. I think they had 18 targets combined between the two. I think they each had nine targets. Obviously you're going to keep going back to them. Jamal Williams has got the revenge game narrative. I don't know if you saw his comments this week, but they asked him about leaving. He's like, "What do you mean? I didn't leave. They dumped me." He's like, "I got a new relationship now. They feed me. They clothe me."
I did see that. So it'll be interesting to see if he has a good game against the Packers defense. For sure. A.J. Dillon,
I think you can plug in a pinch. This would be the game to use A.J. Dillon if you have him. I think, like I said, for Jared Goff, a lot of garbage time. I think A.J. Dillon gets a decent amount of snaps this week. Quadzilla has the chance to punch it in from a couple yards out if they get down into the red zone. Wide receivers, I don't think you're starting any on Detroit's side, and if you are, you're in a very sticky situation.
If you are, I'm sorry.
And then, on the Green Bay side, you're obviously starting Adams. I don't think you're starting any other wide receiver. Tight end, Hawkinson blocked in your lineup. And then Robert Tonyan, I mean, if I have the chance to go to somewhere else, I would.
Agreed.
But tight end is a wasteland. I think he's a bottom end tight end one this week.
Yeah, I would agree. And there it is. We went through the entire week of lineup, or the entire week of matchups right here on the World's Best Fantasy Show. So I think moving forward, we're going to try to put a little more emphasis on matchups. Maybe not go through the entire list every week, but at least go through our highlights because it's important. And we know the fans want to hear who we think the locks should be going forward so they can make game day adjustments if necessary. So really good going through that. I know you said you have a few streamers you wanted to go over. You touched on a couple of them while we were talking about matchups, but who else do you got for your streamers this week, Ty?
All right, so quarterback streamers this week. These are all guys in a pinch. I'm not expecting huge games from any of them, but I think they all have solid floors this week. As a nice guys you can plug in a pinch. That's all these guys are. If you're looking for guys on the waiver wire on Sunday morning, that's all you're looking for is guys that have a nice steady floor for you and could hopefully boom for you.
Right.
So I got Big Ben versus Vegas.
Okay.
I don't feel great about it, but I think Big Ben has a solid game, especially in a tight or 2 quarterback superflex league. He's a pretty solid option. He's around quarterback 15 for the week. And then like I just touched on, Jared Goff versus Green Bay. He is my favorite of the two. It just all has to do with garbage time performance, and we saw what garbage time did for him last week against San Francisco.
Oh, absolutely.
Running back, I got James White versus the Jets. I didn't mention.
Okay.
All these guys on my list are under 50% rostered according to Yahoo. So I went on. Okay. I sorted it all to make sure all these guys were rostered in less than 50% of leagues. So I'm not giving out guys that are 80% rostered and like, oh, these guys aren't available in my league. But James White versus the Jets and Peyton Barber versus Pittsburgh. James White would be my favorite out of those two. But Peyton Barber, if the report is correct and he's going to be the lead back this week, I think he has a nice solid floor of around 6 standard points this week. I don't think he tops more than that unless he falls into the end zone going against Pittsburgh's defense. But like I just said a couple minutes ago, if you're looking for guys on the waiver wire on Sunday morning, you're not going to have very good options.
Oh, exactly.
Wide receiver here, I got 4 actually. I actually do not mind the wide receiver streamers this week. Devontae Parker versus Buffalo, with Will Fuller being out again this week. Tim Patrick versus Jacksonville. KJ Hamler versus Jacksonville. And Sammy Watkins versus Kansas City. So I touched on all those guys when I was going over the matchups. But yeah, those are my 4 favorites. If I had to rank them, I'd probably go KJ Hamler, number 1. Sammy Watkins, 2. Tim Patrick, 3. And then Devontae Parker, number 4.
Okay.
And then tight ends, I got Austin Hooper versus the Houston Texans. I think he has the possibility to get into the end zone, and from a tight end, unless you have a top tight end, that's all you can hope for. And then the same thing with Jared Cook versus Dallas. Dallas has historically played tight ends very bad, and he played Jared Cook played pretty solid last week, so I think he has more of the same. He's got a chance of popping into the end zone.
Okay, very nice. Great picks as always, Ty. I'm sure the fans appreciate the insight from that perspective. As you said, if you're going for a guy on the waiver wire Sunday morning, it's not a guy that's going to have huge upside or you're not getting a 10-point plus player typically off the waiver wire Sunday morning unless somebody in your league's dumb and just dropped, a phenomenal player for whatever reason, which you do see that happen from time to time. But realistically, I think, all of these guys that you mentioned are going to be viable options if you need somebody in a pinch, and that's exactly what a streamer is, right? So,
before we head out of here, I also got 3 bets this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all these bets, they're all 1-unit plays. 1 unit could be whatever you want. Typically, I use a unit as 1 to 2% of my total bankroll, but everybody's different, whether it's $5, $10, $100, $1,000. Everybody's got their own unit. But I'm going to go in order from my least favorite to my most favorite.
Okay.
First one here, Joe Mixon, anytime touchdown. DraftKings right now, it is -105. DraftKings is also giving out a 20% profit boost on every game this week for 1 bet. So you toss that profit boost on it, you boost it up to +114 for you. But Joe Mixon, anytime touchdown scorer this week. We saw the usage last week. He had 29 carries, a couple of receptions. Bears defense didn't look too good last week. I think Joe Mixon's got a chance to plug it in. Just even if he doesn't, just with the usage he received last week, it's a nice value bet to see Joe Mixon sitting at -105 before the profit boost. It's a pretty solid value there.
I would agree. I think Mixon had a great week last week, and I do think, unfortunately for the Bears, but fortunate for me on the fantasy side, I think he'll at least have 1 rushing touchdown this afternoon. So,
next bet I got is Kansas City -3.5. Right now it is -105 on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Okay.
I just think the Ravens will not be able to keep up with Kansas City. Kansas City is going to just throw all over them. The Ravens defense or offensive line is a little beat up now.
Right.
I mean, I think Kansas City 3.5. This line is a little too low. It should probably be closer to 5.5, 6 points. So I mean, it's just a great value. I think Kansas City covers that without any problems. Then my favorite bet of the week is Melvin Gordon over 50.5 rushing yards. It's -115 right now on DraftKings. You throw the profit boost on it, bumps it up to +104. He did that last week. I think he had over 100 yards. Most of it came on a 70-yard touchdown run, but it's a super easy matchup this week. I think Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon could probably both top that. If you like Javonte Williams a little bit more, I think his line was 48.5 yards on DraftKings.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my 3 favorite bets for this week.
And that's something also here moving forward we're going to do a little bit more of. Tyler bets on anything. Shit, he bets on NASCAR.
But hey, man, you gotta have some skin in the game. Whatever makes it a little exciting.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us here for another week of the World's Best Fantasy Show. Hopefully, Space will be back with us next week. He'll get his issues worked out with his Wi-Fi and everything. Hopefully, everyone's staying safe out there. Before we go, I guess we got one last question here in the chat, Ty. Fournette or Aguilar for a flex PPR league?
I
would say Aguilar myself. I'd stay away from Fournette.
Yeah, I'd probably lean the Aguilar too, just based on the Jets matchup. Pretty soft defense. Tampa Bay running backs, it's a hit or a miss. You never know what's going to happen out there. Bruce Arians, you don't want to end up in his doghouse. 1 fumble, you don't see a snap for the rest of the game. I mean, yeah, I just don't like Tampa Bay running backs.
I would agree. But with that being said, thank you guys for joining us this week. Be sure to tune in next week. We are live every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. through the football season. So be sure to like and subscribe to the 1252 brand. And Be sure to check out all the other shows we have going on during the week. We've got the Schuster Express tonight. Alan Bratcher's pregame show is going to be starting here in just a few minutes, I believe, so be sure to tune in and check him out. On Mondays, we've got Fred Hubner's Hube's Views and Brews, talking a lot of sports and a lot of beer. And then on Wednesday nights, we have the Fat Mike Chicago Sports Show. So lots of great content to follow here on 1252. Big thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Ty, and have a good week, everybody.
See you guys. See you next week.